So I'm sure you're all dying to hear what my thoughts are on the new Three Houses trailer, so let's get right into it. Other websites have already gone into more detailed analysis of what gameplay mechanics might be like that we can gather from these trailers, so I'm more going to give some broad thoughts on what my hopes and fears are for this game, having seen this trailer. I already outlined a lot of thoughts in an earlier video, so I'm going to try not to repeat myself from things I said there. So I'll start with what my actual reaction to the trailer itself was. The trailer, upon hitting certain reveals, brought up emotions within me that I've never experienced on watching a trailer before. And frankly, I don't like the fact that a trailer brought up these kind of emotions in me. Once the Avatar reveal hits, I felt a chilling sense of complete and total fear. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. Don't get the wrong idea though, this doesn't mean that I'm against the game at all. Rather, the fear I felt was fear of the sheer death storm that would result in the fan base upon this reveal. And it's really a sad day to be a fan of a particular franchise, when watching a trailer for its latest installment doesn't make you hyped, but instead terrified in how the fandom is going to react. So I'll begin this video by talking about my two main worries about this game. The first relates to the main character being an avatar again. Giving things a day to blow over, it actually turns out the fandom didn't react to this as negatively as I expected, probably because everyone saw it coming. Because everyone saw it coming, I already gave a lot of my thoughts on the dangers of making the main character an avatar in my previous My Thoughts on Three Houses video. So to explain much about my worries on this would more just be repeating myself. The main point being, Corrin in Fates was a real case in point of how making the avatar the game's actual main lord can end very, very badly for your game's writing. Corrin is nearly unanimously considered the worst lord in the series from a story standpoint, and some of that comes from the main issue of making the avatar the main character, that being that the game focuses more on glorifying the player's self-insert than on making the main character a compelling protagonist that works well with the narrative. However, not all of Corrin's bad writing issues stem from them being an avatar. A lot of it comes from them simply having to write 3 different storylines in the time it would normally take them to write one. That's, in my opinion, the biggest source of Fates' writing issues. And it seems like this game is going to avoid that, and I'll get to that later. So I'm actually a little bit cautiously optimistic about this. And considering the massive amount of hate that Corrin got, I feel like Intelligent Systems would have at least noticed some of it, and would take steps to make sure this avatar is a lot better in terms of their story role. There are some people who suspect this avatar is going to be much more of a non-entity, more akin to Fire Emblem 7's Mark, in that they'll just be tutoring students but won't really have a significant role in the plot or gameplay themselves. That is actually wrong. We have seen direct screenshots of them fighting, so we know there'll be a unit on the battlefield. And the opening part of the story focuses on them being part of a mercenary company. So it feels like there'll be a short set of Lin mode-esque chapters to get you used to the mechanics, until you're actually taken to the academy and the real game opens up. But this early plotline leads me into another worry that I have about this character. So, they're in a mercenary group led by their father until an inciting incident forces them to take up a leadership responsibility they didn't have before. Gee, I wonder who that reminds me of. I really hope Intelligent Systems isn't just going, hey, Ike's popular, let's have a complete carbon copy of his initial storyline, that'll make a good character, right? Though from the looks of things, it seems like the Avatar's father at least survives until you get to the academy, so that's at least one difference from Ike. From analysis, the inciting incident more seems to involve the Avatar themselves dying, and getting a vision of Totally Not Tiki and having their powers awaken. It also seems like the House Trio, Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude, are with them in the original mercenary company, or at least being escorted by the mercenary company. So those 3 characters will definitely be playing a major role in the game. I guess while we're on the subject of the early storyline and the main character being an avatar, one interesting thing that I've seen in analysis is that the avatar's face, the default face mind you, is directly shown in an animated cutscene. Some people have taken this to imply that there won't be character customization in this game. The cutscenes in Awakening and Fates never directly showed the avatar, to accommodate for all the different ways that they could look, while this cutscene shows them head-on with their default face, and I highly doubt the game is powerful enough to handle every single possible avatar customization for pre-rendered cutscenes. But I actually think this doesn't completely rule out customization. If you start out in these initial chapters restricted to your default design, and only unlock customization once you reach the Academy, and the game's cutscenes avoid showing the avatar's face from then on, then customization could still be in the game. That's enough on the avatar for now. Most of my other thoughts on them being an avatar, you can check out my previous video for that. But now to my second big worry about this game. If the main character is an avatar, some sectors of the fanbase are going to get mad if the avatar can romance anyone system from previous games is not implemented here. As controversial as this mechanic is, there are quite a lot of players who are only into the newer games because of this, so it feels logical that Intelligent Systems would keep it in. And here's where the problem lies. Most of the party members in this game are the avatar's students. And already I'm seeing just tons of nope, nope, nope reactions from a lot of the Western fandom. Teacher-student romances are... I'm not going to get into this because it is incredibly controversial and it is very much a cultural thing, I feel. I'm Australian and I feel that Europe and Australia don't react to the trope nearly as venomously as America does, but America really, really hates the teacher-student romance trope. I witnessed that firsthand with Persona 5, where Kawakami's confidant didn't really get a lot of attention when the game was still out in Japanese, but the instant the game hit American shores, suddenly it got enormous backlash. Many people have pointed out that we do see a heart up icon when one of the party members is speaking to the teacher and being tutored by them, which might imply the existence of such a mechanic. Now here's where my actual worry lies about this. It's a lose-lose situation. No matter how it's handled, one side of the fandom is going to start gigantic flame wars over it. Either it is an actual thing and they keep it in, and thus they get huge raging hatred for having teacher-student romances in the game, or they cut it out of the English version and get huge raging hatred for censorship. Again, it's a no-win situation. And that's where I'm going to leave that issue. So with my main fears out of the way, I can just talk about some general thoughts I have on the rest of the things in the trailer. This is going to be very random and unorganized, but here we go. Firstly, Totally Not Tiki is definitely voiced by Cassandra Lee Morris. That is a definite plus in my book, she's an amazing voice actress. Next, the overview of the region and the 3 different nations was pretty cool, and as one comment on YouTube put it that I thought was hilarious, we found out more about this world in a couple of minutes than Fates over 3 games. I'm really glad Intelligent Systems listened to complaints and actually did some world building this time. Speaking of the world, another thing I like is the territory that your avatar is attached to is a neutral one in between the 3 nations, rather than being one of 2 nations that goes to war. I like this because it means that if a war does break out between the 3 nations, the avatar being attached to a neutral party makes it harder for the story to be too biased towards any one of the other 3. Speaking of the 3 nations, you actually have to choose which of the 3 houses that your avatar tutors. This was yet another thing that made me very scared when I first saw it, thinking, oh no, the fandom's gonna be like, oh, it's Fates all over again. But I feel like it won't be this drastic. We know this game is going to be released as one version, so all 3 routes are going to be included in the base game. That means they likely won't be as significant of a branch as Fates was. I'm thinking more that this choice determines who your initial characters are, rather than the direction the overall plot takes, and there might be some chapters that branch depending on which house you're with, but that it'll be treated more like Fire Emblem 7, 6, or 5, in that there are branching chapters, but the core storyline is still the same, regardless of which route you go across. But I'm going to refrain on speculating about the storyline, because, well, that led to disappointment when it came to Fates. And then we get an overview of the Academy system. Now, there's a lot to cover here, and other analysis videos have probably done this better than me, so I'm just going to give a few overall thoughts on it. The thing that excites me most about this is that Fire Emblem is trying something very new. Let me explain what I mean. I don't hate Fates' gameplay, and in fact, I hate the fact that Fates gets dismissed as a horrible game overall, forgetting that its gameplay was actually pretty good and a vast improvement over Awakening. But here's the thing, it really was just an improvement on Awakening. It didn't really do much that Awakening didn't already do, it just did stuff Awakening already did, but better. This game feels like it's taking some elements from Awakening and Fates, but it's also innovating on the Fire Emblem formula and doing something that hasn't been done in the series before, in both its setting and its gameplay. And that really excites me. It's nice to see a franchise that, while still keeping its core gameplay overall the same, still tries to innovate on it and do new things. The main theme of this game seems to be unparalleled character customization, at least compared to earlier games in the series. Now, some people are worried they're going to bring back the Shadow Dragon system of reclassing, where there wasn't really much point in using anything but the best classes, because everyone had access to everything. But here it seems like your characters start out as nobles, which are kind of like villagers from earlier games, blank slates that can eventually become any class you want, but you have to train the characters in the right skills before they can take the class exam needed to turn into a different class. Though, slight note, that percentage chance for the pass rates, that makes me wonder whether it's possible that people would just save scum for like 10% or 5% pass rate exams to get really good classes early in the game and break everything. Oh, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who finds the idea of a brigand certification exam hilarious. You see a village, what do? A. Visit it for free items. B. Ignore it, I'm saving turns. C. Roar me destroy! It also feels like there'll be some time management systems in the game where you have to plan out your lessons, which will shape your character's potential in the future. One of the biggest draws to me in Fire Emblem has always been watching your characters grow and develop over the course of the game, and this game feels like it's going to be on a whole new level when it comes to making characters truly your own. And that kind of does make a potential romance with the Avatar feel a little bit weird, since it somewhat feels like you're grooming them. But anyway, bandits! Bandits are in the game! Good, it is now truly a Fire Emblem game. In the brief versus bandits gameplay footage we got, we see an archer use a skill that boosts their range by 1. Please continue the trend of Fates and make archers actually good in this game. We later see a character gain experience, and one of the things on their stat screen interests me. Professor levels. This seems similar to weapon levels from previous games, but why the term Professor? Now, I'm going to go on a complete speculatory tangent here that has nothing to do with the trailer at all, but is something that I've been thinking about. I've seen theories floating around about how this game could handle a second generation without resorting to the contrived writing that Fates did. I'm so sorry, I've forgotten who I saw pose this theory, so I can't really credit you, but I know that I saw this on the internet somewhere. It was that instead of having biological children, your characters, as they study, will eventually become professors themselves and take on their own students. These students will, mechanically, work the same way as children. They'll inherit stats and skills from their tutors, because that's fully justifiable. A teacher's teaching style can affect the way their students develop. But them not being actual biological children means there won't be any time travel or Deep Realm shenanigans required, there won't be a time skip required, and same-sex pairings won't result in objectively inferior gameplay like they did in Fates. Again, this is all pure speculation, and I doubt it will actually be true, but it would be an interesting way to include a second generation without any of the baggage that earlier games had. We still haven't seen a lot of how the characters' battalions are going to work, but that'll probably come in a later trailer. It does seem like foot units can lead cavalry battalions though, which, not really sure how that'll work. Linhardt. The fusion of Lin and Reinhardt. Arena memes given form. Catchphrase. The enemy is everything. I'm so sorry. This screenshot I find interesting for 2 reasons. The first is that the player character is using iron gauntlets, so a totally new weapon type. Finally, Fire Emblem characters can straight up punch, well, non-Lagoos can just straight up punch things. People have observed that the character attacking with the gauntlets gets 2 attacks before the enemy gets to attack. Either these have a brave effect, or it's some kind of weapon triangle effect. The second thing of note here is the enemies are listed as Western Church Soldier, which implies, as many people guess, that at least one church faction will be an enemy in the game. I might have explained my thoughts on this back in the first video, but if they do an evil church plot, I just hope it's not exactly the same as Radiant Dawn. But what's also interesting is that your home territory is the center of the main branch of the continent's church. So if the entire church was evil, that would mean you'd probably be forced out of the academy, and that would radically change things, so again, I don't want to speculate on story. It seems like there'll be monsters that take up multiple squares on the map, and is it just me or does this map give me a very Tearing Saga vibe? Not sure why, but it just sort of does. One more thing, people did notice that at the very end of the trailer, we can see some information on the game where it says, co-developed by Koei Tecmo. We didn't know this detail before, but some people are thinking this does make sense given the focus on battalions of troops. From what I've heard, Fire Emblem Warriors was a very good Warriors game, so it seems like this game is in good hands. So that's about it for my thoughts on the trailer. Overall, I kind of want to distance myself from the fanbase's reactions for a bit, and just judge the game on its own merits when it comes out. That's what happened with Fates, and I feel like I had a much better experience doing it that way. A lot of people have been asking me whether I intend to do a blind playthrough of this game when it comes out. I'm still leaning against it because that kind of rules out me doing a full walkthrough series of it later down the line, and also I feel like Fire Emblem doesn't really lend itself to blind playthroughs. If I don't record it though, I'll definitely be doing a full my thoughts on video once the game finally releases and I've finished playing it. Speaking of which, the release date doesn't bother me, and I'd always rather have a game delayed than have a game released but buggy, like Sonic 06. And also, I'm pretty busy with a lot of other games right now, so I'm relieved this game's not going to release until later in the year. So that's all for my thoughts on this trailer, and I'll see you all next time.